So welcome back to this multi-part free training where I'm showing you how to become a highly paid blockchain developer. So a quick recap of the last video. I really talked about the massive opportunity that exists in blockchain to become highly paid. I talked about how I made $20K in 1 week as a blockchain developer, how blockchain developers are earning $155,000 per year on average in San Francisco, and how developer demand is growing at a rapid pace of 517% year over year. All right. So that's what we talked about in the last video. Go check that out if you haven't already. You can just navigate to the unlocked video with the link. This video is part 2 of the free training, and you're going to want to keep your eye out on your email inbox for the rest of the videos when I send them to you, okay? So in this video, we're going to talk about why this is happening. Like, why are blockchain developers so highly paid? How does it work? Who is hiring? Like, what kinds of companies are actually pumping capital into the space, all right? We're going to talk about blockchain use cases. That'll give you some insight into the kinds of things companies are investing in. And then also, what kind of skills are in demand for blockchain developers, okay? So the first question is, why is this happening? Why are blockchain developers so highly paid? Well, it's really basic economics. It's supply and demand, right? The demand is growing like crazy, and the supply of people that know how to do it is relatively small, and it's not growing as fast as the demand is, right? The supply isn't growing as fast as demand. So what happens to the people who are, trying to get jobs? Well, they're highly paid. The price of compensation goes up. All right, and I want to talk about that demand side of things and kind of give you some insight into how businesses think. This is what I've learned over the years. Being a freelancer, dealing with businesses one-on-one, and also, running my own business. Businesses are getting into the blockchain because they see a massive opportunity, right? In that first video, I talked about, trends and how, blockchain being a trend and taking off and how much opportunity can exist in trends, right? We saw this figure of 517% year-over-year growth. Now, a lot of businesses are driving that growth because they see the opportunity in blockchain, right? And businesses are willing to pay blockchain developers pretty high wage, right? And I'll explain why. So generally speaking, businesses spend money in order to make more money in the long run, right? They are investing. That's what they do. They allocate their capital in their business in hopes to get a return in some way, right? And part of the way they do this is hiring talent or hiring developers, hiring employees or whatever, freelancers, that's going to allow them to reap those profits. So if they want to build something that can make them money, they need people to build it. And they're willing to pay them in order to do that. But because of how the economics works out, there's only so many people who know how to do that. So the price of compensation goes up, right? So it's actually a win-win because the businesses get what they want and they're able to make the money. They're willing to spend the money to make the profit. And the developers get compensated really well, right? They're highly paid. It's a win-win. Developers get paid a lot, and the companies make money in the long run. And that's really how it works. And businesses flooding into the space is a really good sign that further validates that this trend is going somewhere and the blockchain space is taking off like a rocket, all right? And I want to talk about the types of businesses that are getting into the industry and the types of capital that they're bringing to the table, all right? And you might be surprised, it's not just these little random businesses, these new businesses. It's established businesses, people with a lot of capital who are going to invest in blockchain technology. And I'm talking about the types of technology, the use cases, and all that, all right? So to understand how this works even more, let's look at some real data. So I've got a survey pulled up here. It's not just some random blog out there on the internet. It's actually put out by Deloitte that surveyed a bunch of companies, and out of them, 95% were investing in blockchain technology in some way or another. All right, so let's look at some of the data that's inside this report. They talk about how they plan to do it, all right? So top 16% plans to invest $10 million within the next year or more for blockchain in their business, all right? 10 million bucks. 16% of the companies were, all right? Then you keep going down, 23% plan to invest from 5 million to 10 million, and then 26% from 1 million to 5 million. You just see it going down like crazy, all right? And then, the smaller percentages are like less than $500,000, only like 10%. And the companies that don't want to invest anything are, even less than 5%. So you got a really crazy spread of companies that are putting, $500,000 to $1 million to multiple millions of dollars into their businesses for blockchain. All right. And let's look more at their sentiment on blockchain. 84% believe that blockchain is broadly scalable and will eventually achieve mainstream adoption. All right. Now let's look at the types of industries that are investing in blockchain. So the number one is automotive. Next is oil and gas. Then life sciences like biotech, medical devices, and pharma. So in financial services, no surprise because of cryptocurrency. Consumer products and manufacturing, healthcare, technology, media, telecommunications, food, other, and then public sector. All right. So you got a pretty good spread of different types of industries. It's not just this really narrow niche, industry specific thing. There's lots of different industries that are trying to leverage blockchain for their businesses. All right. And you can see a huge benefit. 84% expect blockchain to provide more security than their conventional IT systems. All right. So 32% expect greater speed. 28% expect new revenue models to be created by adopting blockchain. All right. So you can kind of start to see their incentives for doing this and why they're willing to invest money to make this a part of their business. All right. So 43% say that blockchain is a critical strategic priority for their organization. 29% see it as important. So a very large percentage have it, pretty high there on their priority list. All right. So let's talk about use cases for blockchain in their businesses. So supply chain is number one at 53%. Internet of Things is next at 51%. Then digital identity at 50%. Digital records, 44%, digital currency, 40%, payments, 30%, voting, 12%, and then 4% and 2% say none or other, unsure, right? So this gives you a pretty good idea of the types of use cases that people want for their business. So now I want to talk about a report put up by Forbes that highlights the top 50 billion-dollar companies that are exploring blockchain technology and the actual types of blockchains they're using, the tech they're using, the skills, all that kind of stuff, right? These are major players. We're talking, Amazon's, Google's, Samsung's, Facebook's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to talk about how they're looking at blockchain and, the types of tech that they're looking at, okay? So I'll pull this up here. So this is a list of 50 companies, right, that Forbes wants to turn into a bigger list, actually, of 100 companies. But right now, they limit it to 50. And they're billion-dollar companies defined by $1 billion in minimum revenues or valuations, all right? So these companies are investing heavily into blockchain technology, all right? And I'm sure a large amount of this money is probably going towards, research and development. And this report doesn't necessarily break this down, but you can infer that a lot of those funds are going to be going towards hiring technical talent, all right, which means that a lot of new blockchain developer jobs are going to be created, or the demand for blockchain freelancers, or maybe subcontracting blockchain businesses, symbiotic businesses, all that kind of stuff is going to increase when billion-dollar companies come into the game. That's what happens when billion-dollar companies come into the game. Lots of new opportunities get created for other people, okay? So that means you don't also have to wait for mass adoption to happen before blockchain skills are relevant, right? People are pumping money into this space right now. You saw in the report that these businesses believe that mass adoption is going to happen. Well, they're the ones that are shouldering a lot of the risk in this case for that because they think it's going to happen and they're willing to invest money for the long term, and that means their money flows out into other people who can provide them services. All right, now I want to talk about the most common blockchain on this list. All these billion-dollar companies are getting in the space. They got to figure out what technology they want to use. So guess what? Over half of them are using Ethereum, all right? They've looked at everything else and said, Ethereum or some version of Ethereum is the right move for their business, right? So that's a huge deal, right? And that's exactly the types of skills that I've been teaching on my YouTube channel is Ethereum. And we'll talk more about those specific skills in a minute, but just know that over half of these billion-dollar companies are using Ethereum for their business, all right? So let's look at some of the companies on this list, like who are the major players who are actually investing, this money into blockchain technology. Well, it's organized by use case, so supply chain and retail, Amazon, Overstock, consumer goods and beverages, Anheuser-Busch, banking and financial services, a big list here, you can read them all, energy, healthcare, fintech, Coinbase, information and technology, Google, Microsoft, Siemens, VMware, telecommunications, Comcast, electronics, Foxconn, Intel, HTC, Samsung, right? Other notable big companies like JP Morgan have used Ethereum for their own currency, right? And also, Facebook's been getting into blockchain. Now, Facebook isn't getting into Ethereum necessarily. We don't know for sure. And I don't think necessarily every company on this list is getting into Ethereum specifically. But that's a list of the major players, and over half of the people on the Forbes list are using Ethereum, okay? So that's the big list of billion-dollar companies that are investing in blockchain. Half of them are using Ethereum. So let's talk about the kinds of skills that are in demand sort of in that segment of the market. Like, what do those blockchain developers do? What kind of skills do they need to know? Well, the good news is I've been teaching a lot of those skills on my channel and on my website right now already, right? If you've been watching or you've been reading, you've got a head start on learning those skills, right? So what do blockchain developers do specifically if they're working with Ethereum? Okay, well, they work with blockchains, number one. They work with Ethereum. They're going to be working with smart contracts, all right? Those are written in Solidity. And, you can build smart contracts with a tool called Truffle, the Truffle framework. And, you can talk to the blockchain with Web3, which is an interface for talking to Ethereum nodes on the blockchain. And, a lot of people are building, consumer-facing applications that talk to smart contracts and talk to their, blockchain apps with React.js, which is another really hot skill, a really hot technology that blockchain developers often need to know in order to, work on blockchain applications. All right. So I've talked about all of these skills and technologies on my channel and on my website. So if you've been watching any of that, you've got a huge head start on the kinds of skills that, these big companies want for blockchain developers. And if you haven't seen those videos, those articles, right, here's an example of an article on my website where I talk about, how you can build a blockchain to-do list powered by Ethereum. And this is an example of a skill that these companies want to hire for. It's how to work with Ethereum, how to work with smart contracts, right? I'll walk you through step by step on how to build that. And I give you some basics on how, blockchain works, how, a blockchain application works, how you can talk to the blockchain, how you can write smart contracts, all that kind of stuff. I'll walk you through that step by step for free in that full-length tutorial. I talk about, Truffle, the Truffle framework, about how to build smart contracts on the blockchain. I show you how to use Ethereum. This is Etherscan, where, you can look at the status of Ethereum, look at transactions, look at balances, look at smart contracts. I teach you the basics of how to use the Solidity programming language, right? This is the language used to write Ethereum smart contracts. I teach you Web3. This is the, interface for interacting with Ethereum in JavaScript, right? This is a lifeblood of building blockchain applications is, actually talking to the blockchain. And then, I've got some videos and tutorials as well on how to use React.js, a really hot skill for blockchain developers to build client-side applications that, can work for blockchain applications. And here's even an example of inside one of those projects, right? So I've got, some smart contracts that I've written with Solidity inside of here, right? This is the to-do list smart contract. I show you how to write tests for this smart contract. I show you how to, create a client-side application for it, how to put it on the blockchain, how to run a blockchain on your computer, how to connect to a public blockchain, like a live blockchain actually out there that anyone can access, right? I also I show you how to build a React app for this thing as well. I teach you the basics of React.js, how to use React components, some ES6 features and things like that. So all kinds of cutting edge technology that blockchain developers need to know, right? I show you a lot of that in the most free training that's on my website and on my YouTube channel as well. And again, this is really part of the skills that blockchain developers need to know in order to, provide value to these big companies. All right, so that's an overview of the types of companies that are getting into blockchain, what they're doing, like the types of use cases, the types of technology that they're using. They're using Ethereum very heavily. Over half the companies surveyed were using Ethereum. Right. So that shows you the types of skills that are in demand. All the skills that are surrounding Ethereum are highly in demand. Those are the kinds of skills I've been teaching on my YouTube channel, on my website. Now, these are the types of skills that you can use to become a highly paid blockchain developer. So that brings me to the end of part 2 of this free training on how to become a highly paid blockchain developer. All right, in the next video, part 3, I'm going to talk about how to break into the blockchain industry. All right. How to actually take that next step into becoming a highly paid blockchain developer and put your skills to use, okay? So keep an eye on your email inbox for that next video in the training when I send it to you, all right? So get excited, and I'll talk to you then.